Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Florence Delmotte. It's my pleasure to welcome you all for this Green Borders seminar on behalf of the theme of the Jean Monnet Center of Excellence here at UCLouvain Saint-Louis Bruxelles. And just two words about our Center of Excellence, the new one. So, EU-Emergencies, Unity and Disunity in the EU's responses to emergencies, which is dedicated to EU emergency management research, with a special focus on the political and constitutional implications of multiple crises in Europe. Our Jean Monnet Center of Excellence is coordinated by Denis Duet. And our research activities are, on the role of emergencies in the development of the EU and of the political community, and on the EU's responses to emergencies within and beyond the borders of the EU, in the fields of environment, democracy, rule of law, and human rights, and therefore on border policies and migration issues. I think that we have small technical problems, but is it okay if I... Okay, so... and so for this seminar in particular, we are happy to welcome three speakers. Sylwia Urbańska, Bastien Charaudeau on my right, and Marie-Laure Basilien-Gainche online, to whom we have given a kind of carte blanche or total freedom to introduce from their own disciplines and research standpoints to the film Green Border, directed by Agnieszka Holland, which will be projected tonight in the following of this seminar at the Cinéma Vendôme, a film that some of you have already seen, especially Sylwia here in front of me, who is organizing the projection, and which some of you will discover, just like me, in the afternoon. I introduce very briefly our speakers to you. So first, we'll listen to Sylwia Urbańska. Sylwia is professor of sociology at the University of Warsaw. She has worked on migration issues in Poland, at the border with Belarus, but also in Belgium, with a special focus on migrant mothers, and so gender issues, and also on activism and citizens' involvement in Poland. Marie-Laure Basilien-Gainche is a professor in public law, European law, international law at the University Lyon 3. She is a first-rank academic reference in migration law and border questions, and more precisely on issues of human fundamental rights, protection, and rule of law issues. And finally, Bastien Charaudeau Santomauro is postdoctoral associate and Fox International Fellow at Yale University. He works on European border regimes. Last year, he achieved a thesis in Sciences Po Law School, and he worked also on the field, I think, about the French-Italian border, and he's also interested in the citizens' activism in favor of migrants. So I thank you very much, you three, for having accepted our invitation. I'll leave you the floor for about 15 minutes each. We can go up to 20, so that we have plenty of time to ask you our questions and for the debate with the audience and with our students. Thank you, and it's you.
Bonjour. Hello, my name is Sylwia Urbańska. I have pleasure. I want to thank you for the invitation because it's very important for me to have space, to have possibility to speak, to explain what was happening on the Polish-Belarusian border in the state emergency zone, which was installed in 2021, and what was happening till today. I want to explain a little bit about political context, about militarization of this area, and I want to tell something about results of my research. I researching this border between 2021 and 2022 with my colleague Przemysław Sadura, also sociologist, professor from Faculty of Sociology on University of Warsaw, and we were made there specific research which is based on participant observation, on a kind of classical for sociology, anthropology method, which is fieldwork, and I want to tell you something about how in this state of emergency zone, very which was militarized inside, closed for people from outside, what was happening inside, and I want to tell you about three perspectives, which we were research about activists, which help in the forest. They bring help in the forest to refugees, about inhabitants of border villages, and about perspective of soldiers, because we have also a possibility to speak with informally with soldiers and border guards which were there. But at first, I think that we need information about context about this border. Poland, as you see, has two on the east side of Poland, on the east side border, we have two neighbors. One on the north side is Belarus, and on the south side is Ukraine. Our border is also eastern border of European Union. So since 2021, this border started to be very important in European politics because of the regime in Belarus, and because of full-scale war attack Putin in Ukraine. So we have two roads for refugees. One road is Polish-Belarusian border, and second road is for refugees from Ukraine, and we in Poland there was about 6 million of refugees from Ukraine, which cross or stay in Poland. So it is a very, very big phenomenon. But I want to tell today about this Polish-Belarusian border, and you can see another map. This is the map of Poland, and the red territory, it is Polish-Belarusian border, and this territory started to be a very problematic in 2021. It was in August. it was the moment where on this border Polish guardians started to meet thousands of refugees. Refugees mostly from Africa, Asia, and these refugees were sent in very organized way by Putin and Lukashenko duet, who installed a kind of mafia business, and also who installed a kind of hybrid war with the aim of destabilization of this eastern border of Poland and also European Union. And according Lukashenko, it was a kind of effect of sanction which were put on Belarus by European Union, economic and political sanctions, and the effect of that was that destabilization. And in 2021, on this border is very specific because this is the forest border with very primal forest, the last one primal forest in Europe, with marshes, swamps, shaky grounds, very wild inside. And on this border started to appear thousands of refugees who were brought in very organized way by Lukashenko first to Belarus and then pushed to this border in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of forest. So the reaction of Polish government in that time was very right-wing government. It was Law and Justice Party, very fascist, racist, very right-wing government, and they react immediately. They installed state emergency zone, and this zone was very specific because nobody, the law to enter this zone was only for inhabitants and for soldiers and government. Journalists, medicians, activists had no possibility to enter this zone. This zone was full guarded with soldiers, with guns, with all these military machines. So it was difficult to enter this zone. And this zone very quickly started to be a place without law. All human conventions was not stopped to be implemented there. This was a very difficult place, and very quickly. But what is also very important that in this zone, I have some pictures prepared for this presentation, and of course I have to warn because some of these pictures are very there are pictures with a lot of signs of violence. So if somebody is not able to see on that, I need to warn you. The state of emergency zone started from the very small village. There was one event who started this state of emergency zone. This event was spotted global media attention because on the border you can see inside of this ring about 30 refugees who were guarded from one side by Polish soldiers, from another side by Belarus soldiers. And these people were not allowed to return to Belarus and return to the Asia or Syria. They were stuck there about 10 weeks, just on the ground, without food, without water, without medicine, only with one tent for older women with diabetes, with health issue problem. Activists were not allowed to pass food, to pass water. It was unlogical, unhuman, completely not understood action from the part of Polish government and from the part of Belarus government. And the aim of this political stack was not to pass these people through the border to Poland or to Belarus. And they spent under sky 10 weeks. 10 weeks, day and night, and just under sky without any help. So it was the beginning of this state of emergency zone. And later, the same situation was on all these 180 kilometers border. And very quickly, the wire fence was installed. After 1 year, after not quite 1 year, the wall was built. 5 meters wall was built along all this border. And it was not only human disaster, but it was also climate disaster, and for the forest from this part also. And people were pushed by Lukashenko guardians to Poland, and very quickly pushbacks were installed by Polish governments. And people, refugees who were in this forest on this border were constantly were being pushed. It's like ping pong, in ping pong way, from one side to another side. So very quickly the situation began human disaster, because a lot of people died in the wood, in the forest. And I want to tell you about our, I have 10 minutes, about our results of our research, because we were guardians let us went into this zone because we were not journalists and we were not activists. And we found one location in this state of emergency zone where the media and activists were not so active. So soldiers let us go into, and we promised soldiers not to help refugees, not to become activists, but we promised them that we will speak with the inhabitants of villages, border villages, to find how they behave in that state of emergency zone. And we have possibility to speak with all the actors inside. And what was what we've and I want to speak about activists, because it was very interesting. This is very interesting phenomenon, because activists started to organize. Who was activist? Activists came from NGOs who, till that time, were focused on migration issues. Foundation, association, all NGOs who, till that time, making bureaucratic paperwork, started to be change their forms of work. Most of them put backpack on their back, take forms as asylum forms into the backpack, and go into the forest. What was very quickly, activists organized a kind of secret network, international secret network, underground secret network. And there was a very well functioning system that refugees sent pins and a group of activists in the day or in the night with backpack, with medicine, with food, with water, with warm clothes, with asylum forms, go into the forest, search people, and help these people. And very quickly, this network became a national network. It was like hidden with thousands of activists involved in it, and very quickly this activism started to be very diversified, but most of the work was in the forest. To go with the backpack in this wild forest, to find people, to help people who was in very bad condition because of hunger, because of coldness. In Poland, we have very cold winters. For example, in this winter, we had 20 under zero. So being in the forest for the refugees was very dangerous. So activism started to be very well organized, hidden, secret, and started to make a lot of different kind of help. For example, these are pictures from pushbacks. In pushbacks, it's no for soldiers was not. There was no exception for soldiers who was pushbacked. Children, older people, women, pregnant women, refugees who were in hospital and was pushbacked straight from the hospital beds to the Polish-Belarusian border. So it was we have picture of older women who was pushed back to the Belarus, straight to the forest in the middle of the night. And we have also here very famous picture of pregnant women who was activists help her. We can see the medicine pinned to the wood, to the tree, and these women gave birth there. What is also important, ambulances were not allowed to get into this state of emergency zone. People collect money, buy private ambulances, and activists went with these private ambulances illegally, according government, into the forest to help people. For example, if somebody if police was informed that somebody was missing in the forest, police started to search for these people 40 days later. So there was no law in this state of emergency zone.
Sorry, Sylvia.
How much I have to.
Few minutes to conclude, maybe, because.
So we have how much time I have?
Well, in two.
So I only show you picture about the brutality of soldiers and guards from both sides. This is the very popular, very frequent problem because refugees in this very rainy forest have a kind of soldier feet. So it was also the problem. And we have some picture of activists who earlier was officials in the association or in the foundation, and they started to be after this emergency zone started to change completely their everyday practices. And just 2 sentences more. There is there is very important in Poland form of activism, boil soup for the border. A lot of people who were not allowed to or were not able to go into the forest to help because it was a kind of collective trauma for Polish people. Cook soups with special receipts for the people who was after weeks or months of hunger. Collecting things, buying packets for live packets for the forest was also form of activism, and also form of activism was searching dead people in the forest and making funerals and assisting people, assisting families with who were not able to go to the funeral, assisting people, families with telephone, with these cameras to be able they were able to participate in the funeral of the son or the daughter, and some protest in Poland, and this is very, very, very short picture of the situation what were there, and we have another governments now, but the situation is the same. We don't have a state emergency zone, but we have buffer zone, another name, but the same practices inside of this buffer zone. And we have another border, Polish-Ukrainian border, which have different rules where refugees are legal, where refugees were completely different treated, and we have a kind of two forms of borders now. The Polish-Belarusian borders is very linked with racism, Islamophobia. We have a kind of completely different perspective, government perspective on these two borders. So sorry for that.
Thank you. It's very difficult to shorten the presentation of so cruel facts, and thank you. I think that we'll have the opportunity maybe to discuss about the differences between the two cases and the current situation. So many, many thanks for this very useful presentation.
Thank you very much.
Sorry?
Oh, c'est Marie-Laure.
Now, we are listening to Professor Marie-Laure Basilien-Gainche from Lyon 3, who is with us, online, but with us. Marie-Laure, the floor is yours for 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. I just want to thank Cecilia Riscala for inviting me in such a seminar, and to congratulate her for organizing this session of reflections and this session of projection around this tremendous film I've seen many, many times. I just want to underscore that I'm going to be very rapid, but if you want to dive into the topic, I can refer you to a large paper award that was published online on the illegal academic journal of the ULB, so you can have more information about my analysis of the film and of the situation that is highlighted by this film, that is specifically pushback of refugees and Polish-Belarusian border. You will, I hope, you will discover this movie this evening. You will enter in the topic with a narrow street of blue sky and the vast ocean of greenery. This is how Agnieszka Holland immerses us in the Bielowica forest. This is the forest that is at the core of the movie in order to present us what refugees are facing in such an area that is in fact a border zone that prevents them to access to their rights, even the right to them. And this green and this blue fade rapidly into a refined black and white. And then we find ourselves in a plane, and in this plane we are going to discover some families that are going to Minsk airport, and after Minsk airport are going to be transported by taxi drivers to the Belarusian-Polish border. The film is built on 3 chapters, and these 3 chapters have been presented by Sylwia in the presentation. We have 3 main characters in the movie. The first one, the families, the refugees. The second one, the bodyguard. In the topic is the Polish bodyguard, but we can also see the Belarusian military officers. And third, the activists Sylwia talked us about. And you have to understand that Agnieszka Holland is not a random filmmaker. She is part of the school we are used to call the cinema of moral concern. So she is describing in a movie how thick and how violent the border is. The style she adopts in the movie is stripped down. The viewer sees how raw, how rude the border is, how raw and how rude the reality is for migrants and refugees at the border. On the one hand, you have Polish officers, but also Lithuanian officers, Latvian officers that consider refugees as living bullets coming from Russia via Belarus. So they are considered as trapped, as danger. The police has the obligation to get rid of. And on the other side, you have the military of the Belarusian forces that tend to push migrants and refugees through the border into the Polish, Lithuanian, and Latvian soil in order to exercise a pressure on Europe, an instrumentalization, as we said, of migrants in order to obtain from the European Union and its member states the lightening of the sanctions that have been adopted against the Lukashenko regime. What appears in this film is a technology of power, is a tool of this technology of power, this particular, that has been evoked by Sylwia, that is pushback. What are pushback? They are measures, actions, policies, practice, whereby exiles, migrants, refugees are removed from the territory without any assessment of their individual situation. These practices are carried out very quickly, very rapidly, even arbitrarily by the authorities from areas located near the border, but sometimes inside the land, inland itself. And these practices prevent migrants to access the rights they are entitled to. So, three main ideas to characterize pushbacks. First, they're carried out summarily, without human rights obligation and due process guarantees. So, the exiles are not in the capacity, even though they have the right to remain on the territory of the state. Second, the pushbacks are carried out arbitrarily, often realized on the basis of racial profiling. And third, pushbacks are managed secretly, without any registration, any recording of the traceability of migrants and refugees regarding their apprehension by the police or regarding their detention in often secret locations. This issue has been recognized as the main issue by many institutions. I'm thinking of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, of the Council of Europe Committee for the Prevention of Torture, of the Council of Europe High Commissioner for Human Rights, the European Parliament, the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights. These practices become frequent since summer 2021, but they have been existing before. Since the 1990s, Belarus has been a transit country for migrants who ventured to Europe from the east and from the middle side in order for them to apply for asylum in the European Union and member states. So that is why the EU developed partnerships with the country in order to carry out returns to Belarus. So that is why a readmission agreement was concluded between the EU and Belarus. This situation increased, intensified during the 2015-2016 crisis, you certainly remember all, and afterwards it declined a little bit, but it was again intensified with the sanction against the Lukashenko regime, who organized the arrival of Afghan, Syrian, Eritrean, African from the Horn of Africa, and so forth, in order to let them enter into Belarus, in order to put them at the Belarusian Polish border or Lithuanian or Latvian border. But I have to underscore that pushbacks are carried out in other borders of the European Union. For instance, between Hungary and Serbia, between Croatia, Serbia, and Bosnia-Herzegovina, between Greece and Turkey, between Cyprus and Lebanon, between Spain and Morocco. And this practice appears at the beginning of the century. And I will be very quick in order to present two main ideas. The first idea is that pushbacks are a technique in order to promote a technology of discipline, a technology of security. I'm thinking particularly on the work of governmentality of Michel Foucault. And these practices are the manifestation of a logic of domination we can see in the border apparatus the European Union built up at the external border. And the second idea is that this domination is creating a situation of desolation as a result of this border apparatus the European Union built up. So let's see the first point, the domination. We can see borders as apparatus, and I think I have explained as well that is an apparatus of domination. What is the meaning of domination here? It's the meaning that has been developed by Philippe Petit and Frank Lovett, and there is three elements, major elements, in order to understand the situation of domination. There is inequality between the partners, there is dependence of some partners, and there is arbitrariness. And I think that migrants, refugees inside the Pirovica forest are in a situation of domination. I think that pushbacks in such a way are a manner to develop the deportation regime, the deportation machine. I'm quoting here Nicolas de Genova or William Walters, that Europe created in order to protect herself from migrants and refugees. Pushbacks are a normalized practice. This is what has been said by the Council of Europe Commissioner for Human Rights in 2020. So before the Lukashenko regime intensifying the pushback practices from the Polish, Lithuanian, and Latvian bodyguards. This normalization reveals how European member states have integrated the objective of preventing the entry of undesirable and unwanted migrants on their territory. And the best way to get rid of these migrants is to prevent them to enter, because when they are inside the territory, you have to respect some rules, some norms, and these norms are quite heavy burden administratively, jurisdictionally. So they prefer to push back migrants. So we can see practice of pushbacks that are quite systemic. We can see that at the southern borders of Europe. We can see that at the eastern border of Europe. And we have some different scenarios. I can develop on it if you want afterwards. When there are pushbacks at sea, you can see that between Greece and Turkey, between Italy and Libya, or when there are pushbacks on land, like is the case between the European member states and Belarus. These pushbacks are normalized or systematic. What is more, pushbacks have been validated. How have been validated? First element I have to underscore is that some European Union member states validated adopting laws that make pushbacks enter the regulation of their own country, that make pushback part of the domestic legal order. We can see that in Spain with law of 2015. We can see that in particular with Hungary, Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. All these four states adopted modification of their internal legal order in order to legislate relatively to pushbacks, thanks to state of emergencies. And the idea globally is to say if one enters irregularly on the territory, it cannot ask for asylum, and it can be removed immediately from the territory to the soil when it comes from, without any evaluation of its individual situation, without any access to any rights. We have other examples, for instance, Estonia and Finland. And this legislation that validates an illegal practice has been admitted by the European Union. We can see that in a proposal of decisions of December 2021. We can see also that in the instrumentalization dimension of the crisis and force majeure regulation that was adopted under the umbrella of the Pact on European Migration and Asylum. And we can see also that with the communication of 2024, in this communication that is particularly centered on the weaponization of migration by Russia and Belarus, the Commission recognizes that member states must be able to take all necessary measures to protect European external borders, if necessary, by seriously interfering with fundamental rights that are consecrated in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. So it's a very, very bad signal regarding the protection of human rights of migrants. This was the idea of domination. What I want to highlight now is the idea of desolation. The desolation, this border apparatus the European Union constructed, is particularly important. Desolation is a word that is used by Hannah Arendt, and we can immediately think of the desolation of all these rejected migrants that disappeared in the Bielorussia forest, that were faced by hunger, by illness, by cold, by border guards, by militias. It's it's an awful situation. But we can think also that this situation of desolation of we Europeans, because we have lost our faculty to think, our faculty to feel, that is required to accept the plurality and the alterity that are the core of the philosophy of Hannah Arendt for one part, and Emmanuel Levinas for the other part. This is a desolation that is manifest in two ways. The first way is the violations of human rights of migrants. We can observe, we can document on the Polish, Belarusian border and the other borders when there are pushbacks. First of all, you have to imagine what member states are supposed to do if they respect international and regional obligations of human rights protection. For any third country nationals arriving at European borders, when they are intercepted or apprehended, national authorities, police, armed forces, border guards, all these people should carry out identification and registration, first. Second, grant them the opportunity to apply for asylum and to offer them the information that they can apply for asylum. Third, assess their individual situation in order to determine if there will be a risk of ill treatment if returned to the country they come from. Or issue a personalized return order if return is possible, and if ensure the access to an effective remedy against the removal order for the migrant considered. All these 5 elements are absent in the pushback practices. So we have, and I have studied all the decisions of the European Court of Human Rights and some of the Court of Justice of the European Union that deal with the pushback. And we can see many violations of human rights. Of course, violations of the right to asylum and of the principle of non-refoulement. Of course, the violations of the right to life, because many people died in the forest, and we have also people who died in the Mediterranean or in the Tigris River. We have a violation of the prohibition of inhuman treatment, and we have the violation of the right to liberty, because there are a practice, a very normalized practice of using detention in secret location for all the migrants that are intercepted before they are removed from the territory. And we have also a violation of the right to an effective remedy, as all these violations of human rights are not investigated. There are no legal proceedings, there are no convictions of perpetrators, there are no redress for victims. So my point is to say that these pushbacks facilitate the denial of the right to have rights. In fact, in this border apparatus that tends to develop a deportation machine, pushback is a useful tool because it lets the authorities deny for the individuals, for the migrants and for the refugees to right or be recognized as a person before the law. This is a right that is written down in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it is also present in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And if you look at what has been said about this right by the working group on enforced disappearance, it feels that this right to be recognized as a person before the law is like the right to have rights that has been studied by Anna Arendt. And this, in fact, the access, the vehicle, the vector, in order to access all the other rights that are recognized by international and regional human rights protection instruments. Within borders, really, when you have pushbacks, in fact, the individuals, the migrants, the refugees are not considered as subjects of the law. They are considered as objects of domination. So their subjectivity is totally denied. They are confronted with dependence and arbitrariness without any means to counter it. In order to conclude, I just want to make you aware that these refoulements that pushbacks are not ending with Belarus, with Turkey, with Libya. In fact, we have chain refoulement, chain pushback that are organized afterwards, because we have refoulement from Europe to Libya, from Europe to Syria, to Iran, to Afghanistan, to Turkey. So we have a development of the border apparatus very far away from the European external borders, because there is a projection of these European borders in international spaces and in territorial spaces of third countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll switch the place. For the presentation of Bastien Charaudeau was a presentation.
First, I want to, waiting for the PowerPoint to kick in, thank you, Denis, Cecilia, and Florence for inviting us, Thérèse for the organization. Also have to state that as a French citizen, I feel like I'm being spied on by the préfecture on the Zoom here. Just so you know, the préfecture in France is the one that gives instructions to border guards to push people back. Can you all hear me correctly? Yes, I assume. All right. Let's try to reset our attention span. And we can go with the last presentation and then the questions. Right, so I'm going to do that. So just so you have a bit of context about where I'm coming from when I talk about these issues, is I'm interested in the legal theorization of European border regime. I combine generally legal ethnography, legal analysis, and legal political theory to conceptualize what happens, what happens on the ground shapes or reshapes legal regimes of control and protection. My main ethnographic work was at the French-Italian border between 2018 and 2024, on and off, but mostly with 8 months on the ground, working with civil society, observing and interacting with issues such as illegal pushbacks, police violence, unlawful detention practices, and criminalization of humanitarian aid. Issues that are also emerging from the case of the Poland-Belarus border and from the movie. So what I did here, instead of focusing on a specific research question, is I'm going to give you frameworks or tools to think about borders and issues of rights at borders as they emerge from the movie when I viewed it. And these ideas are as follows. Lawlessness versus rightlessness, the state border as a symbol, the state border as a technique, and ways of challenging border control, where I'm going to talk about activists. So the first thing I want to highlight is, well, borders are often depicted, rightly so, as lawless spaces or no-law zones, as you've heard from previous interventions, zone de non-droit in French, with this idea that the law doesn't fully reach the margins of the state. What I want to do here, though, is invite you to consider more closely what the law fails to do, but also what it enables. What the law fails to do is actually quite obvious, right? It's the deprivation of rights that we witness at borders. It's the breaches of basic human rights, basic human dignity, asylum procedure, prohibition of pushbacks, protection of the child. All of the issues that have been covered so far. And it is true that, well, in the movie and at many terrestrial borders, it is very hard to restrain the state power to push back migrants. But the law doesn't only fail, it also enables at the border. It empowers border police and the armed forces to patrol the area, to conduct inspections, to impose fines. It effectively produces an exclusion zone, which is the term which you'll see in the movie at the Belarus-Polish border, that prohibits journalists and NGOs from accessing the area, witnessing pushbacks, and providing help. This is all legal instruments. And ordinary criminal law also applies at the border to find, to stop, to arrest, to prosecute activists based on trafficking laws, anti-trafficking laws, anti-smuggling laws, trespassing, etc. So the important idea here is that migrants and activists do not only struggle against pure arbitrary political violence or power, they also have to fight against the force of the state's legal apparatus. And border guards are not only exercising raw power, although they also are, they also are acting on behalf of the state, sometimes mobilizing ordinary rules of criminal law. So the question I want to ask here is, what political, yes, but also legal conditions make it possible for a legal system as ours to enable a regime of deprivation of rights? So the distinction here between lawlessness and rightlessness is, I encourage you to think of what happens in terms of rightlessness, which is a term that comes from Arendt, but here just think of deprivation of rights rather than a pure lack of law. Law is very much present at the border. One way to do this, to consider the legal conditions of rightlessness, is, it's not the only way, but it's through the study of the agency of the technological form, as Arnold Riles put it. So this is a very cryptic way of saying that legal technique, legal tools, are not only means, so a tool is a mean to an end. Legal technique is not only a mean to be used by a legal actor, it also determines the way lawyers think, argue, make decisions, and thus it normalizes specific ways of reasoning and specific categories and exclude others. So it's a frame through which we see, understand, and act in this world. And so the politics of law, the political aspects of law, also resides in the legal technique itself and not only in the actor's intentions. It does reside in actor's intention, but also in the very form of the law. So one way of examining border regimes is to trace the specific legal operations or techniques that are implemented to debunk the way they work and to highlight their effects. Just so that you have a better understanding or kind of a more concrete understanding of what I mean when I say legal operations and legal technique. Categories are a big part of of the legal technique and how the law functions, how it works, and how it produces effects. The law categorizes people: asylum seeker, refugee, third country national, illegally staying, third country national, children, etc. Categorizes acts: irregular border crossing, migrant smuggling, trespassing. Categorizes places: exclusion zone, boundary line, border areas, police precinct, detention center, and institutions: the state, the border police, associations. I mean, these are just a very few examples of the variety of categories that frame the way we think and act around the border. Legal operations also include qualifications, so it's the way of putting in legal terms facts that are not necessarily legal to start with. Exceptions, derogatory legal regimes is another technique that we witness a lot at borders, and the use of fictions. I'm going to give an example of a fiction later on. The second idea, the state border as a symbol. So this is something that emerges from the movie, and that also kind of emerges from field work, at least from mine at the French-Italian border. A symbol serves to represent something that generally is abstract or immaterial. So the example we tend to give is the scepter represents royal power. So you need the tool to represent the idea of royal power, which is rather abstract. A symbol has three functions: to represent, to shape belonging, think of a flag, or the scepter that references the fact that we are subject of a kingdom, and to prescribe. So to represent, to shape belonging, and to prescribe. The scepter here, with the same example, signifies authority, the authority of the king or the queen. What they say might count as a command. And interestingly, the border has two layers. It's both symbolic and symbolized. The border is a symbol that represents state sovereignty, national membership. It thus contributes to shaping belonging of people to a state, to a political community, to a territory, to a legal system. It also founds control practices, and so it is used to prescribe how can people enter a territory, cross a border, and under which conditions. But the border itself is symbolized, because all of the above, state sovereignty, national belonging, political community, are actually rather abstract. And so the border tends to be symbolized by more concrete objects: walls, fences, border patrols, lines or strips on a map. Then you have the border as a technique, a tool that is used to achieve certain goals. And here I want to highlight a tension around what the border does and how it does it, that revolves around two legal conceptions or configurations of the border: the line and the zone. So there's a classic definition of the border in international public law, which is that it's a line that separates state territories and jurisdiction, and it is used to know which state is responsible and which law applies on which territory. And then there's the border as a zone, the way the border is operationalized in a whole area. And this is characteristic of land borders. There's the border line or the boundary line, and then you have a whole area in which a special legal regime applies. So you can think of buffer zones. We had an example from Sylvia's presentation, the state of emergency zone. You can think of airports too, the famous international zones, which are not international. If you're at Charles de Gaulle in France, you're in France, close to Paris. You're not anywhere else. So this is an example of a fiction. And in airports, so you have this whole area until you meet the border officer, where you're not considered to have entered the territory. That's called another fiction. It's called the non-entry fiction. And you have the example of border zones with the special control regimes that apply at land borders. So there are a lot of examples. France, the Netherlands, and Germany, for example, have a similar legal framework that allow the police to special powers to check IDs and travel documents within a 20 to 30 kilometer strip along the boundary line. The third is regimes of migration control. So border as a line, border as a zone, and then more broadly, migration is controlled beyond the border. It's controlled, so here it's just a way to put it, pre-border, border, post-border. So pre-border would correspond to externalization of border control. Marie-Laure gave a few examples of these with readmission agreements. Visas are also a tool or technique for pre-border controls, cooperation with third country nationals, interceptions at sea, the use of databases. Then you have controls at and around the border, the state border, the land border, or at the airport. And you have what is referenced here as the post border, which is basically controls that happen within the territory with the aim to return people outside of the territory. And so at borders and in the movie Green Border, you'll see that both the line and the zone have some kind of relevance. We can see the importance of the line for all of the actors. For migrants, and here I say migrants, it's people on the move, it's not a legal category, so people, refugees, asylum seekers, migrants. Well, they want to cross that line. And you'll see in the movie, they look at Google Maps, they want to be on the right side of that boundary line. When they do, they say we're finally in the EU, which for them triggers an imaginary of protection, right? It's because we're in the EU. There's one protagonist in particular that says, "Well, we have rights here," because they crossed that boundary line. For border guards, well, they patrol along the fence. And they don't cross it. They don't cross the boundary line because they just act, or maybe sometimes they do, but as a rule, they tend to stay on the Polish side of the border for Polish border guards and vice versa. And their objective is simply to send people back through the fence on the other side of that boundary line. For activists, a similar restriction here, they try not to cross the boundary line. Although at the end I'll talk about different kinds of activism. And their goal is to prove that the border has been crossed, precisely because normally the crossing of the border triggers legal obligations and legal protection. But then there's the reality of the zone. For migrants, they are stuck in the whole area that entails part of Belarus and part of Poland. And so it's a system of forced mobility within that small space that works as a space and not just crossing a line. They are unable to move forward, including through proper legal protection in Poland, because they are too close to the border. This is something that's very similar at the French-Italian border. The goal is to get farther away from the French-Italian border, because then if you want asylum and you ask for asylum in Marseille, for example, then you have a better chance, and generally, actually, your asylum application will be recorded. And if you do that closer to the land border, you have a very high chance that the asylum application will not be recorded or accepted. Zone for the border guards, well, they work in that whole area, and particularly in this exclusion zone, and not just at a border crossing point or along the line. And they benefit from the exclusion zone that reduces public scrutiny. And activists, you'll see that they don't manage to enforce the territorial regime that is supposed to be triggered by the crossing of the border, and they try to. They also, I guess some do, some don't, but there's a stake here around not going into the exclusion zone because they don't have a right to, and so that would increase risks. And they are effectively monitored in the whole area close to the border. So the line and the zone. And the final comment is on ways of challenging border control. The movies, and this is something that is very accurate for the French-Italian border too, shows three types at least. I mean, I don't have a pretense to be exhaustive in any of this, but I'm going to highlight three types of activism here in the movie and the French-Italian border, and their limits. So one is the medical stance, or humanitarian, so to speak. Acting through the medical has two interesting goals. One is a humanitarian goal, which is to ensure basic human dignity and care. But there's also a political goal. The political goal of acting through the medical is to activate a protocol that is centered on care and protection rather than policing. And sometimes it actually appears through a paradoxical sense, which is because we are doctors, for example, this is not political. This is just, caring for people, basic needs. But really what it does is very political, is proposing protection and care instead of policing. One of the limits of the medical stance is that the situation can revert to one of policing once the life-threatening aspects are over or once the care has been provided. Things that you will see in the movie and that you see also, examples of people being taken from hospitals and back to the other side of the border is typically that the reversion of that move. And it can be considered as a band-aid on the structural problem of border violence. Now and I guess you can mix these three, it's not necessarily one or the other. The second way of acting or challenging border control is through the law. You use legal means. Again, you see that a lot at any borders and in the movie, using forms to fill asylum requests, using litigation in front of courts to ensure, and so that's the main goal of acting through the law, is making human rights violations visible, making the state accountable, and ideally, through litigation, changing state practices. So there's a structural long-term goal here. But this, and these are some of the limitations, comes generally with rules. A lot of these associations, NGOs or activists will say, so again in the movie you'll see don't give rides or directions, don't enter the exclusion zone. At the French-Italian border it's going to be don't cross into Italy, so provide help only on the French side of the border but not the Italian side. So these kind of rules that restrict the area of action. And results can be mitigated. One that's particularly interesting is unintended consequences. So that's a strong dilemma for NGOs who want to do litigation. I'll just give you an example of what is happening right now at the French-Italian border, which we basically went from, almost no legal procedure, so really something that doesn't that is not based on any kind of proper legal procedure, to a proceduralization of how people are intercepted, processed, and pushed back or not, and so it was an important litigation, which was to make sure that the law was properly applied and that rights were properly respected when there was an arrest of someone who was crossing the border. Now that's a very new practice, but what the police officers are doing, the border guards, is they are effectively using an existing legal procedure, but this procedure comes with registration in a database and prohibition from entering the French territory. And so while before, people who actually managed to cross the border, they could try 6 times and then manage, and they were under the radar and could do their thing in France and ask for asylum, for example, in Marseille. Now the first time they're intercepted, they will be in the databases, and that might make it harder for them to get around in Europe or have other kind of rights or recognition in France. The legal way also takes time. It plays the long and collective game, which is not necessarily always in the interest of individuals and families who are trying to cross the border. If you take, again, the example of the French-Italian border, those who want to reach Germany or the UK, the goal is just to be past that border, and they don't want to be in the legal process of anything, and they don't want to do litigation in France. And acting outside the law is also a very it's a feature of border activism, which generally consists of helping people cross clandestinely. Sylwia talked about helping people cross clandestinely, which interestingly the movie is depicted as the most efficient method, and in a way, I mean, yeah, it can be the most efficient method. What's interesting here is sometimes you have to act clandestinely to provide a humanitarian aid that's actually legal, but which still kind of carry a risk of being persecuted. So, and I think that part of what Sylwia was mentioning is that you know, in between the outside of the law and within the law. Limits are, of course, that there's increased risk of persecution, imprisonment, and it doesn't necessarily change the state practice or address the structural problems. I actually don't have a conclusion, but this was the 4 kind of ideas, tools, or framework that I wanted to give you to think about border regimes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was also very useful to introduce us to the film we will see. And thank you. Now the debate is open. We'll have plenty of time. And it's just a detail about the Préfecture Bastien is about the secondary school. So, of course, there are plenty of domination in the Préfecture because of the Préfet des études, especially here. But it's not the same as in France.
Imagine.
Well, don't be shy. One, two.
Yeah, just a very quick question. Just have an idea of like this kind of scale of these situations. Maybe I missed it in the presentation, but if you could say maybe how many people are involved in these different contexts. So in the Poland-Belarus border, and then maybe also in other particular zones that have been mentioned.
Thank you. Maybe we'll have the second question here.
Hello. Thank you for the legal explanation. I have just one question. How do you position extraditions into that type of border control, and I don't know, maybe in the scenario of like influencing also legal decisions in that sense?
Thank you. And maybe a third question for the first round. Yes, Cecilia? Marie-Laure has a question online too. You have a question, Marie-Laure?
No, it was an answer.
Okay, so yes, we'll begin with these 2 first questions. Maybe in the following, precise to whom is your question, addressed to whom, and of course the speakers have also the right to debate with each other. So, I think again a small legal, not legal, technical. Okay, we continue. So the first question was about the people involved by the situation.
Yes. Did you ask about how many people were involved in crossing border or in activism? Everything, okay. So it's very difficult to give a precise number of refugees who cross Polish-Belarusian border. It's about, because a lot of crossing was not statistically described, or a lot of crossing was successful, which means that they people were not catched by militaries, but there were different statistics that it was about 80,000 people. For example, official statistics says that every month in very intensive period it was between 3,000 or several thousand of crossing each month. So, but the most probably statistic it's about 80,000 people. We know precisely that about 600 800 people died, were missing, which means that they died in the forest. So this is these are evaluation of activists. But for example, we are more precise with refugees from Ukraine, because we now know that 6 million Poland was a place which hosts refugees from Ukraine, and also Poland was a kind of hub for people. When we ask about activists, it's also very difficult because activists collect their archives these archives are not open, because the one dimension of Polish-Belarusian border activism is organization of a kind of archives of this state emergency zone. And inspiration for that was Jewish archives from Warsaw ghetto from Second War, because the situation on Polish-Belarusian border is very, for a lot of Polish people, is very similar to the Second World War and the cliché of Holocaust, what's happened in the forest. It is a kind of bring out collective trauma. And what we know about, it's better to answer not with statistics about activism, but with type of activism, because there are two types of activism. What is important that big organization like Red Cross or Polish very big humanitarian organization didn't enter the state emergency zone. And it was it was the topic of debate why this organization didn't introduce resistance against government, but into a state emergency zone enter activists from, it was a kind of activism from the bottom up. Activists came mostly from feminist organization, very small association of people who deal with migrant issue, from queer organization, and they were trained in Poland in completely different areas of resistance. For example, in resistance against abortion ban, because in Poland we have the lowest, the worst abortion law. So it's better to answer not with statistics but with types. That there people who enter there entered there in secret because helping were persecuted. 8 years of prison, from 6 months to 8 years of prison, and because of that we don't have statistics. But we have from this hidden underground organization information that 80% of activists inside of forest were women, were female activists. So it was also very important that it were women in the forest against male soldiers. So for us it was very, very. So I answer not with statistics but with these types. Activists not came not from very big organization, and activists mostly they were women.
Okay. Thank you. The second question about legal. I don't remember, but it was for you, I think. Marie-Laure and Bastien.
I can jump in on the two questions. First of all, regarding pushbacks, we have some ideas, imprecise, but some ideas regarding pushbacks at the European level as a whole, thanks to the Border Violence Monitoring Network, who is used to publish the Black Book on pushbacks every year. So it seems that we can at least have 100,000 pushback each year. So it's a massive situation. It's a huge manifestation of violations of human rights of migrants at European borders. That is the first answer I can have. The answer to the second question, extradition is not a question of border regime. It's a question of criminal law. You have a person that is pursued by a judge or by the police in another country for a crime that has been committed on the soil of another country, and therefore in order to pursue the criminal proceedings, you have to be in touch with them in order to make some interrogatory or some investigation or to proceed with the remedy. So this is extradition. So this is not a question of border control and border regime.
Thank you.
Just on scales, extradition, I agree with Marie-Laure. Scales, I mean, it's always hard, but at the French-Italian border, it's in the hundreds for about everything. So you have and then in the thousands, but between 100 and 200 migrants crossing the border every week. You have about 40 to 50 people who actually do mountain patrols to provide humanitarian help. But broader activism, it counts in thousands. It's also a national network, and border guards in the hundreds too.
Thank you. Is there any question? Yes, one just there.
Thank you very much for all your presentation. I have a question maybe more for Mr. Charaudeau. I have a friend who used to spend all of his winter vacation at the French-Italian borders helping refugees to cross it. And he told me very chilling stories about it, like pregnant women that were escaping, police dogs in the snow in the night. He was often put in garde à vue, in custody. He was almost always verbally abused by police, often physically abused. So I was wondering, from your experience there, is the situation really as bad as it sounds? Because the way he was talking about it to me, it was really not that different to what Mrs. Urbańska told us about a border between two fascist governments, as she said, and we are talking here about two European countries. So I wonder what the situation is from your perspective, and if it's comparable or not.
Another question? I will have some, maybe, if I may. So, For you, Sylvia, I would like, of course, to know how the story which was at the core of your presentation in the forest ends, and maybe it's a stupid question because maybe it's the core of the film we will see. I have not seen. How did end the 10 weeks of nightmare for these people under the sky, as you said? I had also a question on activists, but you answered already. And for Marie-Laure and Bastien, I had a question about désolation, inherent or rightlessness, deprivation of rights. And I was just wondering, as well, I'm not lawyer, désolation is not only a matter of rightlessness or deprivation of rights. So how do you think about the continuity between the legal status or situation of deprivation and something which seemed to be in your talks even crueler and harder and darker? Thank you.
Oh, right. So the question. Thank you for your question, which was also a testimony in a way, and I'm glad that you asked it because I wanted to focus on frameworks, but there's a lot to say about what actually happens at the French-Italian border. The stories you've heard are true. I don't know if I like to compare. If we have to compare, it's to a lesser degree the border between France and Italy. But I will say this: while watching the movie Green Border, I was triggered from my time at the French-Italian border because it seemed so real and so effectively representing what I witnessed to there. So, cruelty, testimonies of inhuman treatments, forcing people to keep their hands in the snow, pregnant women being chased. So that happens. And it was, and it is, it's, so fascism is another framework, right? But it's, what's interesting with authoritarianism or fascism, if you want to use that word, is you can have an authoritarian or fascist or rightless regime that's enacted by a supposedly democratic regime or a political regime. And that really is partly what happens at the margins of the state, because also visibility, these are less visible. But yes, to a lesser degree, and I think for French activists it was a little easier to bring the law back into what was happening at the border. For example, there wasn't an exclusion zone for activists and NGOs, except the police precinct itself. So maybe more tools to go in front of the courts. But I'm not sure. But if I have to compare, I would say that. And I can I answer? So that's. I'm curious about what Marie-Laure is going to say about this connections between deprivation of rights and desolation, rightlessness. Honestly, here I use rightlessness in a kind of a legal way, which is deprivation of rights, to ask and to highlight that it's not the same thing as no law. But the answer, I think, is for a political philosopher to give. How, because these are basic human rights. So how the deprivation of basic human rights translated into a system that's not just about legal oppression or legal apparatus, but that becomes something that actually Marie-Laure touched on. I think Marie-Laure, you have a lot to say about this.
I can pursue the idea. In fact, I didn't think of the relationship between desolation and lifelessness, and it's a good point. Maybe it's like the prism needs the lens you use to look at a situation. When I'm talking about rightlessness, it's in the Arendtian way of rightlessness. So you can have law, but rightlessness, so it's a legal lawlessness that is organized, and the lens is the law. So you face a situation in front of the law without any right. When you talk about desolation, maybe it's a more philosophical lens you put in order to consider a situation, and therefore it's a situation before subjectivity, in the fact that you are not recognizing the position of the individual as a subjectivity, as a subject. You are only considering it as an object, and like Zygmunt Bauman will say, like a subhuman. So you are not considering it at all, even less than a slave. So maybe that is a link. But in order to express my point of view, I would like to say, for instance, we are talking about the death of people, but death is not only physical. You can consider economic death, social death, psychological death that you can observe at the European borders. We can see that legal death, in fact, for these people, and subjectivity death, in order to highlight how far, how deep the violence is. This is my first idea. And the second idea, in order to jump in a discussion about fascist or authoritarianism, I was thinking of Didier Bigot, who is a sociologist who forged the word panopticon using the panopticon that has been developed and studied by Michel Foucault. And he exposes the idea that we have liberal apparatus in allegedly liberal regimes. So we can have, like you said, fascist practices, fascist apparatus in illiberal regimes, like it was in the Law and Justice Party regime in Poland. But we can have also this apparatus in a less illiberal country, as Poland is nowadays, with Donald Tusk at the head of the government, or what we have in France with Macron at the head of the state. But we are in a situation that the drift is obvious in the practice and in the methods that are deployed at the borders.
Thank you.
Florence asked about how the situation of people who were prisoned between two cordons in the village, which is called in Poland Usnaż Górny. And Usnaż is a symbol how it starts. These people, after 10 weeks of being prisoned in the center of cordon, they were in the night where there were no media and presence. They were we know that they were collected by the Belarusian guardians, soldiers, put it into buses and taken somewhere into the Belarus. Some of them were I don't remember what the story, if activists found them later, what their story, how they finish this road, because there is a lot of we in fact don't have in the media, in the oppositional media, continuation of the stories of refugees because of the care of activists, because of the activists are afraid that publishing the story, the continuation, the biography will impact in very bad way the condition of people. But these people in the Usnaż Górny was I think this is the most powerful symbol how people are objectified by these pushbacks politics because they were treated as victims, prisons of the power game between Poland and Belarus. Poland government, discourse of Poland government was, they argued that if they let them went into the Poland, they communicate to the all of the world because all the media from all the world were in the Usnaż, because it was like Kafkian situation. Polish governments argued that if they let them into Poland, they sent communication to all the potential refugees, future refugees, that Poland is soft, and then Poland let people came into. In that kind of situation, and the Lukashenko had another argument. So they were victim of power game, and unfortunately, this power game was transmitted to through the media, all European media. So when the media, after 10 weeks, go back to another location, Lukashenko take these people. And two governments argue also that the people are on the in the field, in the no country land, in the field which is between. So it is another line that they are in very thin line which is between border lines. There is no nation land. Lukashenko and Poland argue that they are not on Poland line. They are just behind Poland line, and the same said Lukashenko, that they are just behind Belarusian line. They are in the middle of nowhere. Yes. So this was an argumentation. I can't find logical argument to explain it, because in Polish press, people, there were no discourse to explain that, and people bring Franz Kafka process to explain that, because was completely unlogical and unhuman, in fact.
Thank you very much. Is there any? Yes, I see a question. The lady in white.
Thank you. It's maybe for Professor Urbańska. How did our government react to the movie? How did the peace government react to the movie?
It was very destroying for the government, and with this movie. I think that the movie was seen by, I don't remember the statistic, but it was a kind of obligation to see this movie in Poland, and even this movie was presented even outside of cinemas in Poland, in cultural, for example, in commune cultural places. People were gathered to see this movie. So I think that that more than half of Polish people saw this movie, because it was obligation to see that, because everybody was speaking about that, and it was a kind of political statement to go to this movie, to sign it in the social media, or to speak about, to bring to people, invite people for this movie. So I think I think that this is the most seen movie in Poland now in the history. Maybe there are, I don't know, maybe Lista Schindlera is, but it is not Polish movie. But it was the most famous Polish movies after, I think, in the last decades. But also Agnieszka Holland is also the very important director, very famous in Poland. Is like icon in Poland.
I can add something, because I heard the interview of Agnieszka Holland talking about the movie and the reaction of the Polish government afterwards. And the reaction of the government was very harsh against her. And in particular, she was considered as a traitor to the nation by the law and justice government.
Thank you very much, Cecilia.
Just to add something, I also... Just to add something, because I also had the occasion to listen to Agnieszka Holland at the avant-première of the movie last year in Brussels, and she explained that the producer decided to launch the movie with the calendar of the festivals to avoid censorship by the Polish government, because if she could receive prizes, then of course it would be more difficult for the government to censor the movie. But then I can ask maybe quickly a question. But what was the reaction of the Polish citizens then, and the Polish society? Because you say that it has been seen by many people in Poland, and does it had any effect maybe also on the elections? And I don't know. Because the president is still from the Law and Justice Party, and
yes. It is answer is very complicated issue. The movie was it was not first communicate about pushbacks, because before this movie was have premiere, the information about pushbacks, because the movie is about pushbacks. This is the main message of this movie, about brutality of it. In public debate, and especially in the border villages, places, the information about pushbacks were before. And people, because of social media, people spread information about how pushbacks look like. Activists who enter the zone make films from pushbacks. That these films were very popular. Some people from right-wing voters defined these films as a fake news. Some people believe that it was true, and there was a lot of in the first year of this state emergency zone. There were a lot of documents, testimonies from the film testimonies. interview testimonies from the borders, so people know this, and this was the and most people believe, even if they some people believe that pushbacks is real, and some people accept these pushbacks. So the Agnieszka Holland, the film was the next stage of the debate about visibility of pushbacks, information about pushbacks were earlier introduced into Polish society, but like right-wing voters, they accepted this. That this is there were a lot of patterns of argumentation why they accept it. Because of the hybrid war, because of the Islamophobia, racism, gender perspective was also used to because refugees were presented as young males from Islamic countries who are potential terrorists, who will be probably treated with violence our Polish women. And there were also mobilization of Polish men, for example, civic patrols on the streets in small towns across Poland. Civic patrols, their aim were to catch different color, Polish is a very white country, different color people, and discipline them. So the effect of this film was very important, because it was the next stage of discussion, international, but the knowledge about pushbacks was before, and most of the society accept it. And in Poland there were also this situation bring back a kind of Christian mission of Poland, that Poland is a kind of fortress, Christian fortress of Europe. This mission starts with few centuries ago, when we have fight with invasion from Asia, and it bring back this mission, Christian mission, that we are fortress of Europe, and we have to push back people with another religion, because they bring not acceptable culture to Christian Europe. So it was a kind of this mission revival.
Thank you. I think we have time for a very last question, if there is one.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was frightening, but really interesting. It's maybe a naive question, but I was wondering what would be your view on the potential of lawsuits and strategic litigation to bring back the law and to put an end in some way to this right deprivation. Is it an adequate tool, or does it just increase some rhetoric on like European Court or Supreme Court going against the majoritarian will? Or yeah, that would be my big question.
Yes, in very few minutes.
So that's a big question. It's a fair question, and it's a good question. I think people, I mean, my unsatisfying answer would be we need all kind of actions against these unlawful practices, including clandestine help, strategic litigation, etc. It's a dilemma that people involved in strategic litigation ask themselves a lot. So sometimes it works. What I will often say for the case of the French-Italian border, and I think it's the case for all borders, is if you remove what the NGOs do, and part of what they do is bring cases to courts and win some cases through strategic litigation, it would be way worse. So sometimes it works on specific things. An example at the French-Italian border, in 2015, they were pushing children back, isolated children who were 12, 13 years old. Now they don't, because NGOs won a strategic litigation against the Préfecture and the Alpes-Maritimes. But yet again, sometimes it fails. One story we tell a lot with this dilemma is the existence of waiting zones. I'm actually not sure it's so bad of an example of how litigation can fail, but it's the litigation that it was in the 90s in France that NGOs litigated against how people are treated at the border, which was very unlawful, and the result was waiting zones. So the result is now an existing special regime with less rights for people that's actually hard to fight against. So yeah, I don't have a definitive answer on this.
Thank you.
Could I have something?
Yes, please.
Regarding the Polish-Lithuanian and Latvian border, we have like dozens of decisions of the European Court of Human Rights that decided to condemn the states involved. And in fact, it doesn't change anything. And we have more than 30 cases in front of the European Court of Human Rights for situations of pushbacks at the borders of these three states between 2021 and 2023. So we have to keep on looking at these lawsuits. But what I want to underscore is it's very difficult to obtain some remedies realized in front of the European Court of Human Rights because there is a link between the lawyer and the person that is represented that is necessary. And often border guards confiscate telephones and mobile phones. So this link is interrupted. So it's very difficult to pursue such strategic litigations, but we have to be involved in it, and we have to also develop actions like making people see this movie or to be aware of what is happening at the European borders in order to make people conscious of what the European Union and what member states are doing at our borders.
Thank you very much. That will be a very good final word. All kind of actions. And so I thank you all for this, wonderful seminar on a hard subject. And our speakers, of course, thank you very much, Marie-Laure, Bastien, and Sylwia. Thank you to the students. Thank you for the organizers, especially Thérèse, Davio, and Julie Delacour, and Denis for the technical support and the rest. And so thank you.